The glass shattered. It wasn't a small crack, it was an explosion of safety glass raining down on the sterile white floor. Kael stood there, a heavy wrench in his hand, breathing hard. The alarm screamed like a wounded animal. Inside the clean room, the boy was unprotected, exposed. This was the moment Kael became a criminal in the eyes of the law. He had just destroyed a $10 million life support system. But to understand why a quiet gardener would try to kill his boss's son, we have to go back 72 hours. Back to the moment he found the blue canister in the trash. The Sterling estate was a fortress of modern architecture built into the side of a Swiss mountain. It was designed for one thing: purity. Arthur Sterling, the tech billionaire who invented the world's most secure cloud storage, couldn't secure his own son's health. Leo, 10 years old, lived behind 3 inches of reinforced glass. The doctors called it total environmental sensitivity. The air outside the room would close his throat in minutes, or so they said. Kael didn't know about medicine. He knew about soil. He was 60, with hands like tree bark and a limp from a war nobody remembered. He tended the rare orchids in the greenhouse, the only living things allowed near the main house. He was invisible, the best kind of servant. Dr. Silas Vance, the head of the private medical team, loved invisible servants. It made it easier to count his money. Vance was a man who wore suits that cost more than Kael's annual salary. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and a team of nurses who moved like robots. Every morning, Vance would check the atmospheric scrubber, the massive machine humming in the basement that purified Leo's air. "System optimal, Mr. Sterling," Vance would say, tapping his tablet. "Leo is stable, but weak. The outside world is still too toxic for him. We need to increase the filtration cycle. It will cost another $2 million for the upgrades." Arthur Sterling would just nod and sign the check. He was a man hollowed out by grief. He had lost his wife to cancer. He wasn't going to lose his son to the air. Fear is expensive, and Arthur Sterling was paying the highest price, but he wasn't paying for a cure. He was paying for a prison. It started on a Tuesday. Kael was pruning the hydrangeas near the basement ventilation output. The vents usually blew out hot, odorless air. But today, something was different. A faint, sweet smell, like almonds and ozone. Kael frowned. He knew that smell. He'd smelled it in the trenches decades ago. A low-grade sedative gas. He checked the vent. Tucked behind the metal grate was a discarded canister. It was sleek, metallic blue, and empty. The label was scratched off, but a serial number remained. *X99 suppressant *. Kael put the canister in his pocket. He didn't know what it was, but his gut, that old soldier's instinct, tightened. Later that afternoon, through the glass wall of the garden, Kael saw Leo. The boy was pale, sitting in his sterile white chair, struggling to lift a tablet. He looked like a ghost fading into the furniture. Kael waved. Leo didn't wave back. He just blinked, his eyes heavy, drugged. Dr. Vance walked into the garden, spotting Kael near the glass. "You," Vance snapped, his voice sharp. "Move away from the glass. You're blocking the light sensors." Kael adjusted his cap. "The boy looks tired, doctor." "The boy is fighting a war against his own immune system," Vance sneered, checking his watch. "Something a gardener wouldn't understand. Stick to the dirt, old man. Leave the science to us." Stick to the dirt. That was Vance's mistake. Because dirt is honest, it doesn't lie. Doctors do. That night, Kael couldn't sleep. He turned the blue canister over in his hands. *X99 *. He went to the library in the village and used the public computer. He typed in the serial number. The result wasn't a medical filter. It was an industrial chemical used to reduce aggression in livestock. A sedative. A muscle relaxant that, in high doses, mimicked respiratory failure. Kael sat back, the library chair squeaking. They weren't filtering the air, they were drugging it. They were keeping Leo weak, keeping his lungs shallow, keeping him sick so the father would keep signing checks. It was a perfect loop. $1 billion subscription to misery. Kael printed the page. He folded it into his pocket next to the canister. He had to tell Arthur. But the next morning, the estate was in chaos. Alarms were chirping. Nurses were running. Kael saw Arthur Sterling pacing in the hallway, looking terrified. "His levels are dropping," Dr. Vance was shouting. "We need to seal the room completely. No one enters. The external toxins are leaking in." Kael watched from the doorway. He saw the atmospheric scrubber display. It wasn't showing a leak. It was showing an increase in the dosage. Vance was upping the gas. Maybe to justify the new $2 million upgrade? Or maybe because Leo was getting stronger and they needed to knock him back down. Kael walked into the hallway. "Mr. Sterling," he said, his voice gravelly. Arthur didn't even look at him. "Not now, Kael, please." "It's the machine, sir," Kael said, stepping closer. "It's not cleaning the air, it's poisoning him." Dr. Vance spun around. "Security, get this lunatic out of here." Two guards grabbed Kael's arms. "Look at the canister," Kael yelled, trying to reach into his pocket. "Check the serial number. They're sedating him. He's delusional," Vance said smoothly, stepping between Kael and the father. "Senile. Get him off the property." They dragged Kael out. They threw him onto the gravel driveway and tossed his tools after him. The heavy iron gates slammed shut. Kael stood up, dusting off his pants. He touched the pocket. The paper was gone. The canister was gone. Vance had pickpocketed him during the scuffle. The evidence was gone. Inside the house, Leo was gasping. The treatment was suffocating him. Kael had two choices: walk away and find a new job, or break the law. Most people walk away. Kael went to his truck and grabbed the heavy pipe wrench. He didn't go to the gate. He went to the greenhouse. He knew the ventilation shafts ran underneath the garden. He smashed the lock on the maintenance hatch and dropped into the darkness. He crawled through the tunnels, the smell of almonds getting stronger, stinging his eyes. He emerged in the basement, right behind the massive scrubber machine. He could hear the pump's rhythmic thumping. Asterisk, thump hiss, asterisk, like a mechanical snake. Kael climbed the stairs to the main level. He walked straight into the viewing gallery. Arthur was weeping against the glass. Dr. Vance was adjusting a dial, looking fake concerned. "We're losing him," Vance whispered theatrically. "I need authorization for the emergency procedure." Kael didn't say a word. He walked past the guards, who were too shocked to react to the dirty man with the wrench. He walked up to the glass wall. "What are you doing?" Vance screamed. "Stop him." Kael swung the wrench. Asterisk, crack. Asterisk, the safety glass spiderwebbed. "He'll die," Arthur screamed, lunging at Kael. "The air will kill him." Kael shoved the billionaire back gently but firmly. "The air is fine, boss. The room is the coffin." He swung again. Harder. Asterisk, shatter. Asterisk, the glass exploded. The sterile seal was broken. The alarm screamed. Dr. Vance scrambled back, covering his mouth as if the air was toxic. "You've killed him, you murderer." Inside the room, the pure air rushed out, mixing with the dirty air of the hallway. Everyone froze. They looked at Leo. The boy took a breath. A real breath. He didn't choke. He didn't turn blue. He coughed, expelling the gas from his lungs, and then he inhaled deep. The color rushed back into his cheeks. The gray pallor vanished. Leo sat up, looking confused, but alive. He looked at Kael. He looked at his father. "Dad," Leo said. His voice wasn't a rasp. It was clear. "It smells like rain." Arthur Sterling stared at his son. He looked at the broken glass. He looked at Dr. Vance, who was currently trying to sneak out the side door. He's breathing," Arthur whispered. "He's been drugged, sir," Kael said, dropping the wrench. "Livestock sedative. Check the filter tanks in the basement. The blue ones." Arthur turned slowly to Dr. Vance. The look on the billionaire's face wasn't grief anymore. It was something much darker, something calm and terrifying. "Silas," Arthur said softly, "don't leave." The guards, realizing the shift in power, blocked the door. Vance was trapped. The investigation took 2 hours. The police found crates of the X-99 canister behind the false wall in Vance's office. They found the ledger showing payments from the medical supply company that Vance secretly owned. Vance was led away in handcuffs, still shouting about medical protocols and liability. He looked at Kael with pure hatred. "You're nothing," Vance spat. "You're a gardener." Kael didn't look up. He was busy sweeping the glass off the floor. "Weeds," Kael muttered. "You have to pull them out by the root." The aftermath was quiet. Arthur Sterling sat in the garden, the real garden, next to Leo. The boy was touching a flower for the first time in his life without gloves. He was laughing. Arthur walked over to where Kael was packing his truck. "I fired the security team," Arthur said, "and the medical staff." Kael nodded. "Good idea. I almost killed you," Arthur said, his voice shaking. "When you broke the glass, I almost tackled you." "You were protecting your boy," Kael said. "I get it." Arthur handed Kael a check. It was blank. "Fill it out," Arthur said. "Whatever number you want. It's yours." Kael looked at the check. Then he looked at Leo, who was running across the grass, chasing a butterfly, tripping over his own feet, and getting back up. Strong, free, Kael tore the check in half. Arthur looked shocked. "Why? I didn't do it for the money," Kael said, climbing into his battered truck. "I did it because the boy looked like he needed some fresh air." Kael started the engine. "But if you want to pay me, fix the greenhouse roof. It leaks when it rains." He drove away, leaving a billionaire stunned and a boy alive. Arthur Sterling didn't just fix the greenhouse roof. He renamed the entire estate the Kael Sanctuary, and dedicated his fortune to exposing medical fraud. He lost millions in the process, but he didn't care. He had his son. But here's the question that haunts everyone who hears this story. Kael broke the law. He destroyed private property and risked a child's life on a hunch. If he had been wrong, Leo would have died in seconds. Was Kael a hero for trusting his gut, or was he reckless? Would you have swung that wrench? Let me know in the comments.